Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 80, Frieda Needa Man. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Fran's Aunt Frieda comes to stay with the Sheffield family after losing her apartment and restaurant, or shall I say nightclub, and doesn't want her millionaire boyfriend to find out because she's afraid that he'll think that she's after him for his money. Fran, anxious to get Frieda out of the house, tries to help get Fred to pop the question. Fred is afraid that Frieda wouldn't want to marry him because he's boring and can't dance. Fran decides to teach him how to dance, but he suffers a heart attack, and Frieda finds Fred and Fran in bed together and ultimately assumes the worst, namely that Fran is a potential husband stealer. Fred survives and eventually clears things up and proposes to Frieda. Everyone is thrilled, and Maxwell accidentally volunteers the Sheffield home as the venue for the wedding. Right before the wedding, Fred asks Fran to marry him instead of Frieda because he thinks that he's in love with her. Fran refuses because she believes that Fred is actually in love with Frieda and is just confused. Fran reconsiders during the ceremony, and Maxwell and Sylvia prevent her from stopping the wedding. Right after Fred says, "I do," he has a massive heart attack, but the wedding has been completed. Fred survives, and Frieda sends a video from their honeymoon. Meanwhile, Niles unfortunately accidentally missed his opportunity to learn what the thing is. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you've got it.
Awesome, thank you. Would you like to take us to scene 1?
Yes, so we open in the Sheffield residence. Fran is coming down the staircase in a robe. And Niles is at the door. Yes, there has been a package delivered for Fran. And he asks if Fran's cousin Mel, the doorman, is sending her something again or not. Or is that Maxwell who comes in asking that?
Yeah, it is. Maxwell asks if she's filling in for him.
Oh, yeah. Like, because, it's a cushy job, according to, them. And Fran's like, yeah, even a baboon could, just open the door and get things. And of course, Niles was kind of giving her a look, and she amends it by saying a highly trained baboon, which is not much better, right?
No.
But she explains that the outfit is because she plans to mix and mingle at the yacht club. And Maxwell's like, aren't you setting your sights up a little high? And Fran explains, well, she's not the same chick she was as 3 years ago. She can't just go looking in the same old joints. And then, of course, she looks down into her robe, because first she says she has a lot more class and panache than she did when she first started. She looks down in her robe. Oh, there's the Band-Aid that came off in the bathtub. Classic Nanny. Immediately following up something with something that contradicts what she just said.
Exactly.
So it's a very quick opening scene. Do you have anything you'd like to add to it?
I do not.
Okay. Would you like to take us to the next scene?
So we're still in the Sheffield residence, and the doorbell rings, and in comes Sylvia. "Sweetheart, thank God you're home. I have to warn you, you're in terrible danger." And then she stops herself and she sniffs. And she asks, "Did Niles make a noodle kugel?" And Fran's like, "Ma, could you concentrate? Pretend you're full." And so Sylvia comes back to her senses and asks if Frieda called. And Fran's like, "Yeah, she said her apartment was being painted. So I said she could stay here for the night." And Sylvia's like, "Oi, I'm too late." And Fran's like, "Why?" And Sylvia explains that Frieda has been thrown out of her apartment because she's broke. They even took away her nightclub to pay for her taxes. And Fran's like, "There's no more Frieda's La Freak," which, side note, we've been to Frieda's nightclub. It was not called Frieda La Freak. It was called Tanta Frieda, but whatever. Fran's like,
I guess it's not it's had a revision since the last one, or maybe she had multiple. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's something we'll talk about later. But it seems like in this episode, there's a lot of revisionist history going on.
Mm-hmm.
So Anyway, Fran's like, wow, that place is an institution. Does the city have no soul? And Sylvia points out that the city is instead putting in a Lomans. And Fran's like, oh, well, I guess you can't fight progress. And so Sylvia explains that Frieda is hitting everyone up in the family for a place to stay. And Fran's like, but how could this happen? I mean, the woman has buried 5 husbands. You'd think that she'd be able to live off what she found in their old pants pockets. And then Fran adds, what happened to her millionaire boyfriend, Fred? And Sylvia explains, well, that she's afraid that if he knows that she's broke, he'll think that she's only after him for his money. And Fran's like, well, isn't she? And Sylvia gets real excited. If she has a brain in that fat head of hers, she is. And Fran's like, oh, poor Aunt Frieda. She came this close to making it as a singer, and her damn boyfriend, Steve, had to go and meet Edie. And Sylvia's like, well, good luck getting rid of Frieda now. She's like a cesarean scar. You'll have her for life. And they're walking towards the door because the doorbell has rung, and the door opens, and there's Frieda. And Frieda and Sylvia greet each other on a half-name basis. Fried, Syl. And so Frieda asks about Morty's mumps and whether they're still... whether they're still contagious. And Sylvia's like, well, very. And we find out that Fred is outside because Frieda shouts at him, Fred, get out of the car. And she explains that he's sweet, but he's such a schmageggy. Fred, honey, pull the knob up. And Sylvia, in her stage whisper, says to Fran, how could such a schmageggy become so rich? And Fran looks at her and says, this from the woman who voted for Ross Perot. And so Fred is now out of the car, and he's in the little foyer. He's like outside the foyer. He's like outside on the like enclosed porch, I guess.
Yeah, it's like in between the outermost door. Yeah.
Right. And so, Frieda tries to introduce him to Sylvia and Fran, saying, I'd like you to meet my sister-in-law, Sylvia, and her daughter, Fran. And Sylvia feels the need to clarify, I'm Sylvia. And Frieda decides to go and steam some things. And Fran invites Fred in. Would you like to come in? And he says, oh, no, I'm fine out here. I've got a light, a chair. I don't want to be a bother. And Fran comments, what do you know? He's half Jewish.
Yep.
Do you want to add anything?
No, I do not.
Would you like to take us to the office then?
Yes. So we are now in the office, and Frieda is the karaoke machine, human karaoke, because she is just singing her own like arrangements of songs to poor Maxwell and Cece, who are on the couch. It just kind of one song flows into the next, and Fran hurries in, and she's wearing the outfit that was delivered to her in the opening scene, and she's trying to get Frieda out by saying, "Oh, Frieda, your snack's ready. Like the 17-pound turkey's ready." And so she leaves, and of course, Cece makes a comment to Fran about everything. But Maxwell asks Cece to leave so he could have a word with the skipper, because again, Fran is kind of wearing her. I think this might be a good place to kind of describe what she's wearing.
I agree.
So I think she's trying to look like she's on a yacht, but like as in like a crew member, kind of, because her jacket though is more reminiscent of a bellhop. You're much better at describing clothing than I am, Debbie.
Sure.
Do you mind describing it?
I'm happy to do so. So, I mean, I think part of the struggle with describing it is because it's sort of confusing in its own right. So she's wearing like a navy skirt, and then over it, she's wearing a navy jacket that has gold buttons. It has gold tassels off the shoulders. It has gold trim around near the wrists, and then on top. Oh, and so like the shoulders, as I mentioned, are gold, and they have little tassels off them. But it looks sort of like it's like reminiscent of a uniform, as you were saying. And then on top, she has a white hat with like a white captain's hat with a navy blue rim with gold trim and a gold and blue like medallion on the top. Like I just find it a confusing outfit. Like, I understand she's going to a yacht club, but she's not trying. I don't think she's trying to be a captain of a boat. I don't think she's trying to
Yeah.
be a crew member on the boat. I think she's just wearing nautical themed clothing in hopes that
Yeah.
it attracts attention. But like, to me, that's not what I would wear if I was going to a yacht club trying to meet a wealthy gentleman. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like
Yep.
she's both trying too hard and not hard enough. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not a good idea, I think, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's what she's wearing, which is why uh, Maxwell refers to her as the skipper.
Correct.
So, of course, he kind of, is wondering when she's leaving because otherwise, there's going to be a call to the nanny agency. He raises his tone. And she's like, well, if you would retract your veins, she could explain. And he's like, there's nothing that could explain, there's no good explanation for why she is still in his house.
And that's referring to Frieda.
Yes, exactly. And so Fran explains, though, a very wealthy and repressed man is in love with her, but he's not ready to commit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you see Maxwell's demeanor changes. Well, that is understandable. Uh-huh. It's only fair that she give him plenty of time. How much time are we talking? I don't know. Can't rush these things. Yeah, well, I hope he knows he doesn't have forever because she's not gonna just wait around like some schlub since she can't even spit in this town without hitting some eligible, classy guy. And then at this point, things are getting heated. And so now they're kind of making their way out of the office. And Maxwell goes, well, good bloody luck to her catching one because men seldom date women who say the word schlub and rarely marry those who spit. So Fran huffs off down the hallway.
Yep.
And then Maxwell goes back into the office and he kind of goes to the doors to the little like deck, and they're open. And so he kind of says out there, did your big fat ears get all that, Niles? And then Gracie comes into frame, jumping some rope. She's like, it's just me, Daddy. And at this point, Maxwell's sitting at his desk and he goes, oh, sweetheart, I'm sorry. Do me a favor? Mm-hmm. Tell the man with the big fat ears next to you I'd like a drink. He said he wants a, and then Niles, he says, I heard him. And I wanted to ask you, Debbie.
Yeah.
Did you hear what Niles said as if the actor was saying it without his accent? Like without the Niles accent?
I didn't notice that.
To me, because we know the actor is not actually British, correct?
Correct.
And how I heard him didn't sound like he was using the British accent he uses for Niles. But that could just be me.
I honestly didn't notice.
Yeah, that's the scene. Do you have anything you'd like to add to it?
I thought Gracie was jumping rope awkwardly.
Well, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, because she's just trying to cover up awkwardly.
Yeah, and she didn't do a great job of that either, obviously.
And she continued to jump rope after the
Correct.
ruse was up.
Correct. All right, so I'll take us to the yacht club.
Yes.
So we're in the yacht club. Fran is sitting on a stool at a high table. She gets a drink, and then we hear some commotion behind her, and a woman in a, shall we say, a more conservative suit says, all right, I'm leaving. And Fran asks some guy near her, what was that about? And so he tells her that the woman tried to get in with a fake membership card that looked so phony. And Fran's like, oh, goodness. Well, I'm surprised she didn't dip it in tea first to give it that aged look. Then you paste one of those magnetic strips from the back of an old Blockbuster card before giving it that authentic look of laminating it. And then she realizes that she's basically just outed herself because she sticks it quickly in her purse. And the guy says to her, you wouldn't believe what people will do to marry up. And she's like, oh boy, that's so superficial. Give me a working man any day. What do you do? And the guy sits down and he says, I'm a chauffeur. And she says, that seat's taken. She gets up somewhat disappointedly, and then Fran notices Fred is sitting, now in her line of sight. Fred, oh Fred, it's okay, Fred. You can come talk to me. And he's like, oh, I don't want to bother you. You look like you're in the middle of something. And she says, yeah, my childbearing years. Fred, come on over here, honey. I didn't know you were a member. And he's like, oh yeah, I've been a member for years now. This is my favorite time of day. I love to come over and watch the bartenders cut up the fruit. And Fran's like, when you're rich, they call it eccentric. And she says, Fred, I'm really glad I ran into you. It's obvious, that you're a shy guy, but you feel really strongly about Frieda. Why don't you pop the question? And he demurs by saying that Frieda would never marry him because she's so vibrant, sexy, and his drink arrives, and Fran says to the guy, I want whatever he's drinking. And Fred explains that he doesn't know what Frieda sees in him. Meanwhile, he takes out this wad of cash and is paying for his drink. And Fran's like, it's your eyes. And Fred says that he could never give Frieda the kind of life that she shoots to. Parties, nightclubs. I'm not a very exciting man. And Fran is just staring at him, and it's clear she's drifted off as he's talking. And then he adds, I can't even, and he doesn't finish the sentence, and Fran's like, oh Fred, don't be embarrassed. You can do other things, and really most women just like to cuddle. And he's like, I was gonna say dance. And she's like, well, that's good because that cuddle thing is a big myth. Oh, Fred, I can teach you to dance. A couple of private lessons and you'll sweep her off her feet. And he's like, you must really love your aunt. She'd be moved. And Fran's like, well, moving my aunt is a big priority in my family. It is clearly very true. Yeah. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
I do not, except that the whole dancing thing, we will make note in when we talk about notable New Yorkers, why that's funny.
Correct. Would you then take us to Fran's bedroom?
Yes. So we are in Fran's bedroom, and we can tell that they've been already at it because he's apologizing about you never should have, he's saying she never should have tried to teach him the mambo. And she's trying to reassure him that, in China, women without toes are considered sexy. So obviously it hasn't been going well. And he's like, I'll never be known for dancing. We'll put an asterisk next to that statement.
It gets a laugh from the audience, shall we say?
Yes. But Fran's still not deterred. She's trying to look for some ski boots that might help protect her feet.
Oh yeah.
And she even says, if he doesn't, at least try, I will regret this. And she's like, did I just say I? And so
yeah,
she decides to demonstrate again. She turns on the music and she goes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, turn, 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 shimmy, 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 shimmy. And then she's like, okay, your turn. And so, of course, Fred starts dancing, and he dances well, but Fran is not looking. And when he's done, that's, of course, when Fran turns back to him, and he's already standing still, and he just says, I'll never be as good as you. And she's like, oh, don't compare yourself to me. I was on Dance Fever. And then, so she then, says, okay, let me just teach you a couple of steps to, to fake it. And then, so they start dancing together, and, oh yeah, kind of like that. And he's like, oh, WAP. And she's like, yeah, just like that. And he goes, oh, WAP. Again, she's like, except for that, that could get annoying. And then he starts complaining, there's something wrong with my arm. And she kind of dismisses it. But then suddenly he falls on top of her so that they are now on her bed, and she's on the bottom, he's on top of her, and she's stuck. And she's going, oh my God. But she's also moving underneath him.
Yeah, she's flapping her arms.
Yeah. And he's just on top of her. And Frieda, of course, walks in at that moment. And it looks very suggestive because she's again moving underneath, going, "Oh my God, oh my God." And so, of course, Frieda's like, "Oh my God," and like is very upset, runs out of the room. And then Fran makes a comment with like this like look on her face that that's rigor mortis setting in, implying that there's something going on in the
Uh-huh.
lower region, which we could have done without.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially that look on her face when she says it. It's like, but yeah, so basically they are caught in a compromising kind of situation when they were just innocently just trying to learn to dance. And but yeah, do you have anything to add to that scene?
I do not.
Then can you take us to the hospital?
Sure. So we're now at the hospital and Fred is in the room with the nurse. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is in the hallway. And by that I mean Fran, Maxwell, Sylvia, Nettie, Frieda, the three kids, and Niles are all in the hallway. And Frieda is just besides herself. Can you believe that she did this to me under my own roof? Oh, Mom, I'm gonna faint. Hold me. And Nettie's like, hold you? I'm still paying for this hip. You happy, hot pants? She says to Fran. And Sylvia steps in. Don't you yell at my daughter, Nettie. And then she immediately turns around to yell at her daughter. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you so desperate to get married? Where is this insanity coming from? And then and again, in her stage whisper, Mr. Sheffield is here. Put some lipstick on. And Fran's like, why doesn't anyone believe me? Like, I was just trying to get them together. I was trying to teach him to dance. Like, just because he was lying on top of me with romantic music at 1 a.m. doesn't mean. And then she's like, this would all be a non-issue if I was running opposite Dole. And Maxwell says to Niles, I've got an 8 o'clock appointment. Would you please let Cece know what happened? And Niles says, oh, I already phoned her, sir. Told her that a certain millionaire suffered a heart attack in Miss Fine's bed. On cue, in rushes Cece. Maxwell, you're all right. And Niles is like, oh dear, you thought I meant him? I think it worth pausing to comment on how Cece appears.
Yes.
So we are used to seeing Cece look very polished, very put together. This is the opposite of that. She's there in her pink fuzzy slippers, in her white-based pajamas. Her white coat is not buttoned properly. Her hair is up, and she's wearing big black glasses, which we've never seen her wear before. She just she does not look like herself.
Yeah, it's obvious that she immediately got out of bed and rushed to the hospital.
Correct. And so the nurse comes out and says, he can have visitors, but he's very weak, so you should go in one at a time. And the whole crowd's like, oh, thank you. We'll do that. As soon as the nurse is gone, they all rush in. Did you consider this all one scene, or did you end it there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're now all crammed into the tiny little hospital room, and Frieda, they're all kind of peering over Fred, and they're all like behind his bed. And Frieda's like, Freddie, it's your Friedala. Are you all right? Can you hear? His color is not so good. And Fran's like, well, maybe that hose you're standing on might have something to do with it. And Frieda continues her wrath. You have the nerve to speak to me? And Fran's like, I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. And then it seems like Fred's trying to talk, so everyone's like, shh, shh, shh. He's trying to say something. And from the bed, in his like semi-conscious state, Fred says, Fran, you're so good. Put my leg where? And Fran's like, where the heck is that hose? And Frieda has clearly heard enough. This has confirmed her worst suspicions. You husband stealer, you. Now, who's going to take care of me? Where am I going to live? And everyone clears out of the room with excuses like, I gotta go, got bedtime. Anyway, needless to say, no one wants Frieda to live with them.
Exactly.
Do you want to add anything?
Nope.
Would you like to take us to the office then?
Yes. So we are in the office, and Maxwell and Niles are there. And Maxwell's clearly thinking about this whole situation. He thinks it's absurd to think that Nanny Fine would be going after Fred. He's nice and all, but she couldn't be interested in him after me. And Niles just says, what's so great about you?
Exactly.
I mean, what's so great about you is your ability. Oh, shut up. So, then though Maxwell kind of has a realization. Well, I guess it's only a matter of time, if she keeps putting herself out there before she does meet someone. Is she doing this just to spite me for, taking back the thing? And Niles is like, oh, I don't know, sir. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to say, sir, considering I don't know what the bloody thing is. And Niles is very frustrated.
Clearly.
And then so Maxwell's like, oh, well, you might as well, I might as well tell you. And of course, the phone rings at that moment, and Niles pulls out the cord immediately. He's not letting that interrupt him. We'll get back to them. And then so Maxwell's like, well, first of all, no one else can know. And at this point, Maxwell has gotten up from his desk and he's kind of pacing in the front of, where closest to the audience. And since Maxwell says no one else can know, this is, of course, at the point where Niles notices that Cece is coming in through the back doors that lead out to the back, deck.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to try to stop her. So in the back, we see Niles and Cece start to fight.
Mm-hmm.
As Maxwell's describing, how they were in Paris and, the plane, and he had told her that, he loved her. And again, in the background, we see this confrontation between Cece and Niles eventually wins by holding up one of the chairs against Cece.
Yeah.
And of course, once Niles puts down the chair, closes the double doors, and comes back next to Maxwell, Maxwell says, well, that's it. Now you know what the thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And Niles, we just hear him give out a frustrated scream.
Exactly.
And that is the scene. Do you have anything to add to it?
Other than my condolences to Niles, no.
Oh, yeah. I would be so frustrated, too.
Exactly.
Although, I don't see why he couldn't have said, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't catch that. Could you say it again?
Yeah, well, Maxwell didn't really give him the opportunity because Maxwell walked out of the room and closed the door behind him.
Yeah, that's true. But
And Niles was just confused and then flabbergasted and then incredibly frustrated. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay,
So,
would you like to take us to the next scene?
Sure. We're now in the kitchen and Fran is smearing cream cheese on a bagel and the kids are there. And Brighton's explaining why he refuses to share a bathroom with Fran's aunt anymore. Basically, he brushed his teeth with some, and I quote, chick product, and he doesn't want to even speculate what it was. And Gracie's like, oh, what are you complaining about? There's a toenail from Jurassic Park in my bathroom. And she holds up her fingers a few inches apart, gesturing how big that toenail is. And then Maggie also chimes in, look at this. Your aunt ate the entire box of chocolates that my boyfriend gave me. And then Fran's like, oh, don't worry, kids. I'll take care of everything. And we see her teeth are covered in chocolate. So perhaps it was not Aunt Frieda who ate all of those chocolates.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The kids leave, and in comes Cece, who says to her, Nanny, fine. I didn't know you were attracted to decrepit old men. Am I going to have to keep my eye on the two of you now? She points to Fran and Niles, who actually also was in the room before. Should have mentioned him. And Cece adds, well, in my day, two people got to know each other first. And Niles adds, well, in your day, there were only two people. And so then we hear Franny, darling. And Frieda comes down the back stairs and she says that Fred regained consciousness. He explained everything. And then he proposed. And she holds out her hand the way newly engaged women like to do. And she asks Fran to forgive her. And Fran's like, did you accept? Yeah, all is forgiven. They hug. And the kids rush downstairs with all of Frieda's bags, all packed. And she's like, oh, look how excited they are for me. But not quite yet, my loves, because, there's still so much to do. I haven't even decided where I'm going to have the ceremony now that I'm getting married. And Maxwell walks in from the very back door. Here, here. And she's like, here? Oh, what a doll. And she kisses his cheeks, or air kisses his cheeks, I should say. So I'm going to go upstairs and try on my old wedding gown. Come on, kids, help zip me up. And the girls follow, and Brighton's like, I'll go get the pliers. And Maxwell says to Fran, all right, I know something just happened. And she's like, well, you just offered to have Frieda's wedding here. He's like, what? Why didn't you bloody say something? And she's like, oh, calm down. Do you think I would subject you to the horror of a fine family affair? Not after what happened at Grandma Yetta's birthday party, which you know nothing about, so moving on. And he's like, I can't believe I agreed to let Frieda have her wedding here. And she's like, I got a plan. And he's like, oh, thank God. And she's like, okay, first, I'll go out and buy a dress for the wedding. He's like, yeah, right. She's like, better give me a credit card. This way it looks like you're going along with it. And he's like, okay, right. And he takes out a card and hands it to her. She's like, okay, now, while I'm doing that, this will be a snap for you. Go upstairs. And he's like, yeah. She's like, find Frieda. Uh-huh. And she says, and take it back. As she walks out of the room with his credit card, and he just pauses for a moment before he realizes the horror of that plan. Do you want to add anything?
She got him good with that.
Oh, abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah. But yeah, we are now then in the living room, and it is the day of the wedding. So we see, friends and family milling about. Sylvia's there next to Nettie talking about, why is it that, family only comes together for weddings and funerals? And Nettie points out that Sylvia wore that dress at Frieda's last wedding. And she mentions that, she's saving her new one for Nettie's Shiva?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then Fran at that time makes her entrance down the stairwell, and she explains that they don't need anything old or blue because they just shoved Frieda into her corset. And anyway, so at that point, Fred's down there already, and he approaches Fran. And, she's once again saying, how wonderful it is and how great he is and happy for them. And, she would marry him in a heartbeat. And he's like, then marry me. I think I'm in love with you.
Yep.
And at first she's like, no. And he's like, I'm a millionaire. I could get you anything you want. And so she picks up the flowers in just the base on the little circular table. And she's like, this'll do. She's like, no, no, you're confused. You're actually in love with Frieda. Did you then count? I think I counted the next one kind of separately. Did you?
I can do that.
Okay.
So I just want to add that in her conversation with Fred, she says, you don't love me, you love Frieda, you guys make a perfect couple. There's nothing more right in this whole world. And then it cuts to, we're now during the ceremony, and Fran is sitting between Sylvia and Maxwell, and they have their arms holding her down. And she's like, this is so wrong. And
they're in the front row too.
And
it's a very intimate setting.
Right.
There's no way others couldn't hear her.
Correct. But Sylvia says to her, you say anything to disturb this wedding, you're dead. And so we cut to the minister, who's like, and do you, Frieda, Rubinsky, Manarino, Chung Dao, Bitterman? And Fran's mouthing no. And Maxwell's like, excuse us, coming through. And he grabs her and pulls her to the hallway between his office and the living room. And Fran's like, I can't let Frieda go through with this. And he's like, oh, yes, you can. My house is turned into a pest motel where the fines check in, but they don't check out. And she's like, but you don't understand. He doesn't want to marry her. He said he loves me. And Max was like, he's confused. The man just had a near-death experience. He didn't know what he was saying. And she's like, well, let me get this straight. Now you're taking it back for him. And then she, kind of changes her mind that, maybe it's fine. Maybe I should just let them be happy. I mean, Frieda's been widowed 5 times. Maybe 6 will be her lucky number. And the camera has turned, so we see Fran and Maxwell in the hallway, but we also see the wedding ceremony behind them. And we hear Fred say, I do. And then he keels over. And Frieda's like, Fred. And then she turns to the minister. He said, I do. And everyone in the audience of the wedding says, we heard it. standing up, pointing at the minister.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add
Yeah.
anything?
Well, because like Fran also said, ignorance is bliss, with her reasoning. She's been widowed 5 times, maybe 6 is it? Yeah. But yeah, so then the last little bit we have is that obviously Fred has survived because Fran and Maxwell are in the living room, and Fran explains that Frieda sent a tape from their honeymoon. And she's like, wow, that quadruple bypass, like really must have done something great. And so then we turn to the TV and we see a clip, and it's Fred dancing. But what it really is it's a clip from Singing in the Rain. It's the make 'em laugh bit. And we'll explain more in Notable New Yorkers as to that. And Fran makes the comment, oh, next time I'll teach him the Macarena.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the episode.
That is. Bernadette, do you have anything you want to talk about holistically before we jump into the shticks?
I don't think so. Do you?
I do, actually.
Okay.
I one of the issues I take with this episode is that it has a lot of revisionist history. For example, we've already talked about Frieda's nightclub being referred to as Frieda's La Freak, but it previously was Tanta Frieda. We have Fran saying to Maxwell that I wouldn't subject you to a fine family affair. That's clearly not true, because in the first season, Maxwell allowed them to hold Fran's mother's 50th birthday party there in the episode The Wine Cellar. And it just kind of bugged me how there were all these like inconsistencies that like I feel like they would remember. And the reference to like Grandma Yetta's birthday party, like we didn't see that, but we did see parts of Sylvia's party. We did see the party that Fran threw in The Party's Over in season 3. It just like these continuity things kind of bugged me.
Yeah, it's like the what's it called? Why can't I think of the word? Like, again, we've talked about how the rooms are set up in the house are constantly changing.
Correct. It's a room of requirement, except not.
Yes. Yeah. That would be one of the things we can say about the nanny is that they are consistently inconsistent.
Correct.
In some respects.
Correct. And I just wanted to point that out because to me it's weird. And also I'll point out that like Sylvia, there's clearly some frostiness between Sylvia and Frieda, but like Maggie was almost not able to have her Sweet 16 at Tanta Frieda because of their feud, which was sort of ended. And then like there was a food fight. Like anyway, it's just strange. And also the level of hostility between Nettie and Fran, because even though obviously what's her name, Frieda is Nettie's daughter, like she shouldn't immediately jump to the conclusion that her granddaughter is a husband stealer. And also I'll point out that why was there a
niece, great niece,
her granddaughter. Frieda is Morty's sister.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense then.
Yeah. So as we learned in A Fine Family Feud, they were fighting over who got Grandma Fine's pearls, and Frieda jumps out, you took my grandmother's pearls? And Sylvia's like, I have to sleep with her son. Again, Nettie theoretically is dead, but she's not, which is something we've covered in a previous episode that is inconsistent. Also, and what I was about to say also, it doesn't make sense why there was a minister for the wedding instead of a rabbi, because Morty would be Jewish. So, which means that Frieda would be Jewish. Anyway, just these inconsistencies, I found them distracting from the plot of the show, clearly, since I felt the need to start talking about them.
Yeah, unless, like, again, given the various last names she had, maybe she's not practicing And Fred, as was discussed, Fran joked that he was half Jewish, but he probably wasn't Jewish, right?
Probably
So
not,
maybe they
no.
did a non-denominational wedding.
Yeah, the minister had crosses on his prayer shawl.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
yeah, I'm just
I
saying.
don't know.
I'm not looking to you to explain it. I'm just saying, like, I found these inconsistencies distracting from the plot. So,
Yeah.
all right, I've
Yep.
said my piece. We can go to favorite
Okay.
fashion now.
Okay. Well, we had the return of the robe,
We do.
and we have seen that robe before.
Yes, we have.
Now, what did you think of the dress Fran wore to Frieda's wedding?
So I'll start by describing it. It is gold. It's her usual cut in that it's sleeveless and short. It's gold and shimmery. I think it has like a fake turtleneck. It's like a mock neck. And it's solid gold. It's pretty. I probably wouldn't wear it. What did you think?
There's some type of pattern to it as well, like some type of subtle pattern to it. I thought she looked nice in it. I could not pull it off.
What did you actually think of her outfit for going to the yacht club? We didn't actually talk about what we thought about it.
Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think appropriate for her like intentions.
But did you objectively like it?
I mean, I can't think of like an occasion to wear it, but it didn't look bad. I don't think.
No, I mean she looked fine. I didn't care for it for the reasons we've already talked about, that it didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have liked it better without the shoulder pads. Like, actually, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of like a pilot uniform, not a captain uniform. It just seems out of place.
Yeah. Yep. Were there any other outfits that caught your eye, whether
Yes.
for good or for bad?
Yeah, actually, so I want to talk about two things. One, I liked Fran's green and black outfit in the kitchen. It's like a neon green turtleneck with a black like jumper over it with neon green horizontal stripes. I thought she looked great in that. I like the colors. And I want to point out I liked what Cece was wearing in the office. She was in her usual black, but her hair was tied up and she had a black flower in her hair, which is a look we haven't seen on her before. And I thought she just looked so nice in that.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any other fashion you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so.
All right. Would you like to talk about some notable New Yorkers?
Yes. So
There weren't that many this week.
not really. So like I didn't really have anything, for instance, in the first scene. Did you?
No.
Okay. So we've already talked about Loman's Plenty of Time. So there was a thing about Steve and Edie.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find them?
Yeah, so Steve
Okay.
Lawrence and Edie Gourmet, a pop vocal duet who began working together on Tonight, starring Steve Allen in 1954. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. They were actually on an episode of The Nanny in season 3 as Steve and Edie. They were in the episode Canasta Masta.
Yeah. So like I knew they were familiar. Ross Perot.
An American billionaire businessman who ran for president as an independent in 1992.
Okay, here's where I didn't catch every song that was in the medley arrangement. Did you?
I didn't realize it was a medley, which maybe I should have. I caught the first one.
Okay, go for it.
Rose's Turn from Gypsy, which was sung by Bette Midler, and that's according to our friends at genius.com. That was the lines, will someone tell me when it's my turn? Don't I get a dream for myself? Yeah.
Yeah. Because then later it transitions into Mr. Sandman, I believe by the Chordettes. And then
I didn't realize that was a different song.
Yeah. Because they call her, because they specifically ask whether how many arrangements she has. She's a human karaoke machine. And then again, Fran asks that, like, has she done her tribute to Chaka Khan, which we talked about, was it last week?
Correct.
Or the week before?
Chaka Khan was referenced in the Rosie show as, I think, the next guest on the Rosie show.
Okay, that's kind of funny that quickly we have another reference. So yeah, I think she was doing a medley.
That makes sense, because you're right. Fran is asked how many arrangements did she know, but I guess I didn't realize that arrangements meant compilations of songs instead of like. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, it's just I know Mr. Sandman, like this song, so I recognized that piece of it and knew that the previous lines did not fit in with that song.
Got it.
Anyway, moving on, we have yet another reference to Blockbuster.
Correct.
Which we can also do in 90s nostalgia.
Correct.
Now, the big reveal is who Fred is.
Go ahead.
Who is Fred?
Fred is Donald O'Connor.
Yes. And can you tell the audience who Donald O'Connor is?
He was an actor who was known for musicals in the 1940s and the 1950s, most notably Singing in the Rain. That's according to our friends at IMDb.
Yes. There's a reference to Dance Fever,
which was a musical variety show that aired from January 1979 until September 1987. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
And then there is also, like I said, the reference, like the actual clip to Singing in the Rain.
Which was, I believe, a 1952 film musical.
And then the Macarena.
I missed that one, but that was a very popular dance from the 1990s, which is very simple. Even I can do it.
Yes, like we learned that in school. I don't know if you did.
I don't know if we learned it in school, but I definitely picked it up from. I think I picked it up from my compatriots.
Yeah,
it's not a classical dance, shall we say?
Did you have any other notable New Yorkers?
Jurassic Park.
Yes.
A 1993 sci-fi film, which was directed by Steven Spielberg, which was based on Michael Crichton's 1990 novel by the same name. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. As further Nanny trivia, I'll point out that in a previous episode where we have a flashback, Sylvia tells young Fran that little Stevie next door is interested in taking her out, as she heard from Mrs. Spielberg, which we've already proven doesn't make sense time-wise. There's a reference to Bob Dole. He ran for president on the Republican Party's ticket in 1996. And then I think worth noting, because we see Aunt Frieda so infrequently, but Lainey Kazan, she's an American actress and singer who's known for her roles in Saint Elsewhere, My Favorite Year, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and of course, The Nanny. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. And then I'm out.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Yidishikop.
We have a few this time. So I'll start, go in order. Noodle kugel. That's what Sylvia thinks she smells when she walks into the Sheffield home. Kugel is basically an egg noodle casserole. It's sweet. It's boiled noodles with sugar, eggs, cottage cheese, sour cream. Some people put fruit or raisins in it, and then it's baked. It's yummy. That's according. The yummy is from me, but the description is from our friends at thechoppingblock.com. We hear the word schmagegi bandied about. A schmagegi is a stupid person, a loser, a simpleton. It's not a term of endearment, shall we say? Fran and Maxwell use the word schlub, which is a worthless, a stupid, and unattractive person. That's according to our friends at jewishlanguages.org. And then the most notable one, I think, is Sylvia tells Nettie that she's saving her next dress for Nettie's Shiva. Shiva comes from the Hebrew word for 7. It's the 7-day mourning period that begins immediately following burial and lasts typically for 7 days. It's family members are going to sit Shiva. That's like the verb version of it. And it's usually done in the home of the deceased or a close relative. During Shiva, the community comes to the house of mourning. That way the mourners are able to recite Kaddish in the presence of a minyan or a group of 10 people. During this time, mourners will refrain from working unless dire economic results would occur. Friends, family, everyone brings things to the mourners to comfort them, including themselves, but often food. And the mourners refrain from enjoyable activities. They traditionally sit on low stools or benches or even the floor, which therefore reflects the humbling effect of losing a loved one. Two other things to note. When people are sitting Shiva, they tend to cover the mirrors in their house. There are a couple different possibilities for where that tradition comes from. It may come from a fear that the soul of the deceased or the angel of death could be viewed in the mirrors, or it could also reflect the idea that our physical appearance is not important at that time. And then finally, when Shiva finally ends, many people are going to get up and then take a walk around the block, which symbolizes a return to normal life. So
Interesting.
Yeah. Jews have ritualized mourning, which is supposed to be very helpful when you lose a loved one. So, yeah. Did I miss any?
I don't think so.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see what's next. We have our 90s nostalgia.
90s nostalgia. Mm-hmm. So Niles just ripping the cord out of the phone to stop it from ringing.
Yep.
Yeah.
If only it worked that way now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not as dramatic now.
Correct.
You just like ignore it.
Correct. Definitely not as dramatic. What about you've already mentioned Blockbuster.
Yep.
There's the tape that was sent from their honeymoon, and it was clearly a VHS with the old television. Old cars. I can't resist.
Yeah. Also, like when Fran's teaching Fred how to dance, like she has her little like boombox thing. But also, like, side note, what made her think it was a good idea to try to teach him that at 1 a.m.?
Yeah, that was another question.
Like, what?
Why would he be there at 1 a.m? And she was super awake for 1 a.m.
Yeah, and you're playing music, and theoretically others are trying to sleep.
Correct.
And like you're dancing. Like, yeah, it does not make sense.
Correct. I have one more. The idea of marrying up through a yacht club. To me, that felt a little dated. Did that not feel dated to you?
I mean, sure. I mean, I still think people try to marry up. I don't know how they go about it these days, but yeah. Yeah, fair. It's kind of funny. Like her trying to, like her card, like trying to get into the yacht club. Like that feels like she couldn't get away with just like you feel like it would be more sophisticated these days, right? Like there's a QR code or like it's on your phone or like, something like a little more sophisticated.
Right. She wouldn't be able to get in today if she did what she did then.
Exactly.
Agreed.
So yeah. Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Well, again, for this season's newly acquired shtick, ATT, after the thing, we can add yet another one. Right, Debbie?
Correct.
So, 4, right?
Correct. We're up to 4 out of 5 episodes. In 4 of them, Fran has brought up the thing to Maxwell. And used it either to her advantage or made him feel guilty or anything like that. 4 out of 5 episodes this season, she has done so.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then I think we're up to some future fun.
Yes.
So this is not the last time we're going to see Aunt Frieda, but this is the last time we see Fred. We will see Frieda again next we'll see her in the X Niles when Fran, I think I've talked about this before, Fran leaves a credit card application in her room and she lied about her income and Niles demands a raise and Maxwell is none too thrilled. So Niles leaves and gets hired as a houseboy for Frieda. But more interestingly, we see Frieda in the last season of The Nanny, and she's very upset because she considered herself uninvited to Fran's wedding because her invitation said that she was invited to come but forbidden to sing. And so she takes revenge on Sylvia, whose doing it clearly was. She ends up buying Morty and Sylvia's building and kicking them out.
Wow. Petty.
Yeah, so Fran has to figure out how to fix things real fast. So that's one. Two, we talked about Bette Midler singing one of the songs in Frieda's arrangement. Bette Midler actually will be a guest star on The Nanny in the episode You Bet Your Life at the end of this season. So something to look forward to. And finally, Frieda's wedding is not the last wedding we see in the Sheffield home. In the last season of The Nanny, Maggie gets married. So, yeah.
There you go.
We've got some future fun ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You're definitely safe on venue costs.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And as of, present day, I think New York City is the most expensive, or if it's not the most expensive, it's one of the most expensive places to get married in the United States. So doing it at home, definitely cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Although the cost of living is also exorbitant.
So why not repurpose your home then? Get more bang for your buck.
Yeah. Okay. So now are we ready for the episode rating?
I think we are. So
go ahead.
Sure. As a friendly reminder, we rate each episode from 1 to 5 lipsticks, with 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. But we always reserve the right to re-rate them at the end of the season. And so really the ratings are kind of meaningless, but they're fun.
Yes. But we do them anyway.
Exactly. Is it my turn to go first or your turn?
It's my turn.
Oh, excellent. First. I love it when it's your turn.
I know you do.
It makes me happy.
Yeah. So I would say, so there are things that obviously we've talked about that kind of, detract a bit from this episode. But I would say overall, I enjoyed it. Poor Niles.
Yeah, poor Niles.
Yeah, poor Niles. But that was hilarious. So I think, I didn't really like the whole everybody accusing Fran of being a husband stealer, and I don't like Fran's last minute decision to try to break. Okay, quick aside, do you think she is trying to stop the wedding to get married herself, or because she didn't want Frieda to marry someone who claims to love someone else?
Actually, I think neither. I think she was trying to break up the wedding because she was thinking Fred didn't actually love Frieda, and whether he loves her or not, she didn't want Fred to be trapped. That's what I took it as. And if he just so happened to love her, then he could court her later.
Okay, so not for Frieda's sake, but for Fred's sake?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so not great on that either, but but I still like overall. I liked some of the scenes. Let's see. I'll just go with a 4.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, so I think I'm also going to give it a 4. I mean, it's a funny episode. I enjoy watching it, but like watching it with more of a like
Critical eye.
discerning, yeah, critical eye. I was going to say discerning view. You see there are things that don't fully add up or don't really make sense, and I don't care for that. But it is funny. It is sort of ridiculous that Frieda jumps to the conclusion that Fran is a husband stealer and won't hear otherwise until Fred explains it to her. But I love the scene where Maxwell says to Niles that, okay, I'll tell you what the thing is, and then Niles still doesn't get to learn what it is, despite that's all he wants to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so to me, that's really funny, and I enjoy
Yeah,
that
but
immensely.
also his earlier like barb at him, like, what's so special about you?
I mean, he's kind of right, except
Yeah.
for the whole Maxwell's gorgeous, rich, and genuinely often tries to be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean that also is sort of reminiscent of the episode having his baby, where Fran's considering, using a sperm donor, and she tells Maxwell that she picked out the perfect guy, 41, tall, handsome, creative, with a big head of hair, and he immediately assumes it's him, even though it's donor profile number 41.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah, I'm also going to give it a 4. I mean, it's good. It's not the best. It's not the worst. Overall, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, is
an
there
improvement?
Exactly. I mean, compared to some of the other episodes we've seen this season, I like it better. I like it better than the first 3. It's kind of on par with last week. So, it's a 4. It's a 4 for me.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I don't believe so. How about you?
I don't. All right, then. That's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 81, Me and Mrs. Joan.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.